It's the Wiltfong Whip Around with Steve Wiltfong. Today is Monday, May 20th. I am your host, Josh Newberg. Excited to be here today. Some big visits took place over the weekend, and there was a major five-star decommitment. We're going to break it all down. But first, guys, make sure you are subscribed to the best recruiting channel in all of the land and on YouTube. Go ahead, hit subscribe for me, please. Also, the Wiltfong Whip Around on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Okay. Let's get into it. Let's bring on my guy, Steve Wiltfong. Steve, I'm glad that we could get you seated. I know you were out celebrating the Pacers' big series win.
Yeah, Pacers in 7. We got it right on our second prediction. It's kind of like golf. I'm a scratch golfer when I take that mulligan shot. We said Pacers in 6. Ended up getting it right, Pacers in 7. We're going to go Pacers in 7 over Boston. And recent history tells us that Boston's unfortunately going to lose a player or two this series. It's going to be crucial to the Pacers' advancement into the NBA Finals.
All right, so you guys get a bonus prediction here from the great Steve Wiltfong. All right, let's start in Athens, where it was a star-studded recruiting weekend at Georgia for the Kirby Smart scavenger hunt. The number 1 offensive tackle, the number 2 overall prospect in the country, David Sanders. He was back in Athens after taking visits to Ohio State, Tennessee, and some others. Steve, coming out of this trip, what did you learn? Which teams would you put in that top tier of his recruitment right now?
Well, certainly I still look at Tennessee as one of the top programs in David Sanders' recruitment. Wouldn't be surprised if he's back on Tennessee's campus one more time before he takes his official visits. The Vols host a big recruiting weekend over Memorial Day weekend, and David's kind of been making the rounds to his finalists this summer, heading into the summer ahead of official visits. And if he makes it to Tennessee next weekend, that's 3 visits to Tennessee in less than 2 months. So right. I like the way the Vols are trending in that recruitment. A couple visits to Ohio State has certainly skyrocketed the Buckeyes. They get the last official visit the weekend of June 21st. Georgia's a school that we've always had at or near the top at different points of this recruitment. There's times where I've thought that they've led. I think the important factors in David's recruitment are going to be player development, which coach and program has a track record of maximizing a 5-star at the offensive tackle position. And we've seen Georgia do that a lot recently. This is also a young man that's an A student, and they really value that degree in academics and the support that the student athletes get as they, football, obviously, there's a lot of time commitment to that, but also how do they cater to their athletes in the academic arena. And so one of his most recent visits to Georgia prior to this one was heavy academic loaded. So Georgia's checking the boxes in those 2 arenas. And then again, Josh, we've said this on several episodes. With these 5 stars, NIL is certainly a relevant talking point, and I think that's also the case here with David Sanders. And I think we've seen Georgia, the way that they cater big players and guys around the line of scrimmage. I think that they'll be competitive in that arena as well. So it's exciting to see where Georgia fits in this recruitment after this visit. Clemson gets that first official visit May 31st. We've seen guys shut down their entire process and commit to Clemson. I think Sammy Brown did that last year, if I remember correctly. 5-star linebacker.
Brian
they were
Wesco,
battling Georgia on.
He was another one that shut it down early with Clemson. I was going to ask you about that because it is a May 31st visit, and we saw that happen. Do you think Clemson is going to push for David Sanders' commitment on that date? And do you think that there's any chance Sanders could be willing to forego those other official visits and make his decision that 31st weekend?
Well, they're certainly going to push for it because this is the only official visit weekend that Dabo Swinney and company are hosting in the month of June. They're going to bring in as many top targets as they can the weekend of May 31st. It's going to build a camaraderie. It's going to be a great atmosphere of just getting guys together, like-minded guys. And Dabo Swinney always crushes that weekend with his eloquent message about why Clemson is right for them. And these are, Clemson doesn't offer a lot of guys. So when you visit that weekend, you're already pretty high on Clemson, and you're one of the few guys that they're recruiting. And the beauty with covering Clemson is if David Sanders takes visits after that Clemson visit, he is not a silent commit. You cannot give a silent commitment to Clemson and then still take visits. So that's why we see those other guys shut it down and announce their pledge. So if David Sanders is at I believe it would be Georgia the next weekend, this recruitment's going on, and I would feel less confident about Clemson's position there. Depending on what happens coming out of that visit. It's his dream school, man. I think his shower curtain was Clemson related when he was growing up. Clemson toothbrush, the whole nine. Matt Luke getting hired at Clemson was as pivotal in off-season assistant coach hires anywhere in the country. I mean, you look at Clemson and that program and what they've done under Dabo Swinney and company. They've done it despite not having much NFL talent on the offensive line. But Matt Luke gives them validation as an offensive line coach that can develop David Sanders at the highest level, where they wouldn't have been able to say that earlier in the cycle before Matt Luke was hired. And again, that's a key component in this young man's recruitment.
All right, so Clemson, May 31st. Georgia will be June 7, Tennessee, June 14, Alabama, June 18, and Ohio State wraps up the month of June on the 21st. So those are his official visits that are set for the summer. We'll see what happens there. All right. Moving on, also in Athens, offensive lineman Zaire Addison. He's out of the Tampa Bay area. And heading into this visit, Florida State was the leader on the recruiting prediction machine. But you and I talked last week. We weren't really sure, where Georgia was going to make him a priority or if Georgia was going to truly make him a priority. But, Steve, coming out of this visit, it is clear Zaire Addison is a priority for the Dogs. Is this going to present a problem for Florida State?
Well, I think anytime Georgia's pushing for somebody, it's a problem for whoever the other leaders were. That was kind of the case with Nick Saban in Alabama for so long. Kirby Smart's now that head coach that's one phone call away from completely flipping a young man's recruitment by being able to point to the success, the absolute dominance in the NFL draft over the last several years. Competing and winning 2 national championships and knowing that if you go to Georgia, you're probably going to play in the SEC title game. And you're going to have a chance to play for much more than that. So, look, they brought in receivers Phillip Bell and Marcus Harris this weekend alongside Zaire Addison and Bo Jackson. I know that they absolutely covet Bo Jackson. There's a lot of other guys that are going to visit in June. Georgia's board is always fluid too. Guys that are moving to the top, whether it's based on tangibles, seeing them in person, seeing them work out at their school as coaches are on the road, or getting them on campus and getting to learn more about their personalities and seeing if they're a culture fit. So anyone that we're saying is a major target for Georgia now, they could slide down the board in weeks. And someone that we're saying is someone they're keeping warm could end up being hot depending on new information and just spending more time with these prospects this summer.
Yeah, and Zayden Walker, the number 1 linebacker in America. It looks like what we thought heading into the visit, that Georgia is still probably the team to beat for the 5-star linebacker out of Robbins, Georgia. Now, on 300 edge, Isaiah Gibson, he is committed to USC, but you do not expect him to sign with the Trojans. Coming out of this Georgia visit, what did you learn?
I'd be surprised if he signed with USC. I think that's going to be a tall task for them to keep him in the fold. I think he more than likely stays in the SEC conference, and I just like where Georgia stands right now, led by Coach Chidera Uzo-Duribe's charge on the recruiting trail. Families always felt comfortable with him, Kirby Smart, and again, the track record of development at that edge rushing position, the proximity to him. I think those are all things going in Georgia's favor. And talking to people that spent time with Isaiah this weekend, I think they ultimately think he'll end up playing his college football in Athens. Now, there's some other schools that he will still take some official visits to. As Georgia has a spatula in hand, so does Auburn, Florida, Oklahoma, and South Carolina. There was a time where I thought he was really high on Oklahoma too, but I'm going to go back to that proximity thing. And I just think Georgia's got a lot going for themselves in this recruitment right now.
All right, let's stay on that Georgia topic. There was a pair of prospects right in Ohio State's backyard from the Cleveland, Ohio area. They had on campus Trey McNutt. He's one of the top safeties in America, and running back Bo Jackson, one of the top running backs in America. Both were on campus for official visits. Is it possible that Georgia is going to really screw up Ohio State's recruiting by going into the state of Ohio and pulling 2 of the best players?
Well, it wouldn't be just Ohio State with Trey McNutt, as Oregon, Texas A&M, and USC are high on his list. I had Georgia outside the top 4 coming into his visit, but he says he's going to come back. He had a great time this weekend. He said the environment showed why they're a winning program. He likes Coach T-Rob, Travaris Robinson, defensive backs coach Dante Williams. Certainly you got Kirby Smart and Will Muschamp and their track record of developing safeties. He learned what Georgia could do for him. So they're moving up the list for Trey McNutt. And then Bo Jackson, we talked about it on Whip Around a couple episodes ago. We thought Georgia was at or near the top of the list for him even prior to this official visit. He had an amazing experience. I talked to a source on campus that spent some time with Bo over the weekend. And they said that they thought it was that Georgia moved a ton with him this weekend. So, he's going to take his visits to Alabama and Ohio State. I know there's some confidence around Ohio State too. Ohio State could take up to 3 running backs this cycle. They're certainly in the mix for him. So we'll see what happens coming out of the rest of the official visits. But Georgia certainly showed them what an official visit's supposed to look like. The scavenger hunt, such a laid-back weekend where they get to see these coaches in a different light. These coaches and these families really get a chance to get to know each other in that kind of setting. And Bo Jackson loved it. And he's been there a lot. And his mom's got family in the area. So we'll see.
All right. Well, Steve, we hit on some of the highlights from the scavenger hunt. Go to Dogs HQ. They did an incredible job all weekend of bringing updates on everybody that was on campus. I will also have Rusty Mansell later today on this channel going a little bit more in depth on UGA recruiting. All right, Steve, let's talk about it. Number 1 wide receiver, DeCorian Moore of Duncanville High School, decommitted from LSU on Thursday. That was the big news, even carried through the weekend. Moore's decommitment is by far the biggest so far in the 2025 cycle, but certainly won't be the last decommitment. In this video, we're going to break down the finalists and get Steve Wiltfong's opinion on who now leads for Moore. All right, so first, Steve, were you surprised by the decision of Moore to part ways with LSU?
No, I wasn't surprised by it. I think, he's obviously been keeping Ohio State, Oregon, and Texas very warm. I think the timing of the decommitment surprised some people in Baton Rouge because I think there was some good dialogue with Coach Cortez Hankton and the Tiger staff, even leading up to that decommitment. And then LSU not being on the official visit list, I think that also has surprised some. But I'll say this, Texas is obviously trending on the on-3 RPM. I've not put in that pick yet. Obviously proximity to home, Coach Sark's offense, the way he schemes open wide receivers, the relationships that DeCorian and his family has with Texas players and families of the Longhorns players has put them in really strong position. But I also talked to a source this morning with knowledge of the recruitment that thinks that Ohio State and Oregon could even still be ahead of Texas despite saying all of that. And so I think this recruitment still got a lot of runway. He's still working through his process, trying to figure out what he wants to do, and he has those official visits locked in for Ohio State the first weekend in June, May 31st it begins, and then Texas June 14th, and Oregon June 21. This will be his 3rd trip to Ohio State this year. Brian Hartline and his development of 5-star receivers is one thing that stands out. Being around the Ohio State receivers when he visited for a spring practice, those were like-minded individuals that he thought he could relate to and like the way that they got after it on the practice field. His second visit, his mom, Marjan, pointed towards the way that Coach Ryan Day and his staff treat their players for mental health and make sure that they're always in good shape. In that regard was big. And his second visit to Ohio State, they were the only people on campus. There was no time divided with any other recruit. So just got some really good intimate time with the Moores. Now coming back for the official visit, Ohio State squarely in that. And then Junior Adams, Oregon's receivers coach, he's known Corey Moore since he was in the 8th grade. He's been to Oregon 5-6 times already, sometimes with mom, sometimes without. So he's been there a ton. He originally scheduled to go last weekend, didn't go this past weekend as Oregon hosted some top targets. But there's no question that Oregon's in that. They have a lot of coaches on staff that have the Texas ties. Coach Samples, his dad's obviously the head football coach over there at Duncanville, and then Coach Will Stein and his background coming from UTSA, now having one of the most prolific offenses in college football. Oregon and Ohio State have a lot going in this recruitment for DeCorian Moore as well. And I think just saying that he could end up at Texas, you could be right, but it would be premature because I don't have it. I don't know who to say has the edge right now. I'm not sure Corey Moore knows. Oftentimes we can kind of figure out who maybe has the edge going into visits, knowing recruitments are fluid and stuff. But this one I think is still very fluid, and all three of these programs are in really good shape going into the official visits.
Yeah, very competitive recruitment now that he's back on the market. And now that he's back on the market, is there any other teams outside of those three that are trying to get a foot in the door with DeCorian Moore?
I don't think so. In fact, he tweeted over the weekend his recruitment is not open. So he knows who he likes. He's built a strong relationship with those coaches. His mom has built a strong rapport with those schools. There's trust at Ohio State. There's trust at Texas. There's trust at Oregon with the people and the coaches and the track record of offenses and receiver play. So now it's about getting it from 3-1.
Well, next season, I'm sitting here looking at the schedule. It's kind of interesting for 2025. Texas versus Ohio State in the Horseshoe to open the year. Which sideline you think DeCorian Moore will be on?
Well, if you're putting me on the spot right now, even though my intel is split on this, I would hedge on Texas right now. I think.
Yeah. That's kind of my feeling right now. But like you said, those official visits are going to weigh heavily into his decision. Speaking of, has he said when he wants to make a final decision?
Yeah, so he would like to make a decision before his senior season, but I think this is one of those recruitments that will continue to go on even after that, and LSU will try and get an official visit during the season. So maybe they could come back around and be a player in this one. But he wants to make his final college decision before his senior year, go win another state championship, and then enroll early at the school of his choice. But we know games will be played, coaches will move around. There's always elements to recruitments that can keep that door cracked. And these coaches don't get these jobs by accident, man. They're very persuasive, alpha type personalities. So if you keep allowing yourself to talk to these coaches and these schools, there's always a chance for them to move the needle in their direction.
All right, you guys tap in with me. You're the recruiting experts. Where do we think DeCorian Moore is ultimately going to land? Let me know, comment section below. All right, Auburn, they hosted a couple key targets this weekend out on the Plains. The group included a 5-star offensive tackle and a potential flip target. I got On3 Steve Wiltfong here to break it down. Now, Steve, we'll start with 5-star offensive tackle Andrew Babalola. He made his official visit. It was a big one. Now, the 6'5.5", 295-pound offensive tackle visited back in March, but this was his official visit. Now, what are you hearing coming out of this one?
Well, I think if Auburn's not the leader, they're in the top 2 based on talking to a couple sources about this recruitment even coming in. They're battling Stanford here, from what I understand. He's going to be at Stanford first weekend of June. Now, that doesn't mean that Michigan and Oklahoma and some of these other programs, Missouri, aren't in it. He's going to take officials there. He likes those programs a lot. But as I try and add up the intel and the information, I think Auburn's doing a fantastic job here as they try and recruit a second straight top 10 recruiting class. Loaded up at wideout, did a really good job around the line of scrimmage on defense. Offensive line, major priority for them. Andrew Babalola, maybe not a bigger target. And this is an old-fashioned recruitment just based on relationships, getting a relationship with Andrew, getting a relationship with his parents, and Coach Thornton and Coach Freeze and company have done a great job there. Because when I look at the 5-stars, Josh, and I was going to say which 5-stars has talked about NIL the least, I will put Andrew Babalola at the top of that list. I don't know how many NIL discussions that there have been with the Andrew Babalola camp, but I think that's far from what's going to make this decision for him. They love Stanford. They love Auburn. Like these other schools, we'll see what happens with the official visits. But Auburn could land this guy, and he has top 5 NFL draft potential. He has got so much untapped talent to him. When you stack him up alongside these other recruits, there's a lot in the tank there. He would be an exciting recruiting win for both of those programs. And then certainly as Michigan and Oklahoma try and maintain their standard of play, and Mizzou right there too. But I like Auburn and Stanford today.
What a huge win that would be for Hugh Freeze at a position of major need. Now, Auburn also had a pair of elite running backs on campus, both of whom they probably had a little bit of ground to make up on. Usman Kroma, we know Georgia, Florida State heavily involved there. And then, of course, Alvin Henderson, who is committed to Penn State, but he's from the state of Alabama. And you and I, we've always thought that this Alvin Henderson recruitment would come back around. What are you hearing on Usman Kroma and Alvin Henderson's visit to Auburn this weekend?
Well, I think that there's a lot of confidence around the Plains that ultimately Alvin Henderson will be a Tiger, but I think that there was also confidence of that in the spring prior to him committing to Penn State. His questions with Auburn have been, how does a running back of his skill set fit in Hugh Freeze's offense? And he's been able to show him what they've done at SMU at Liberty and other places throughout his career, Ole Miss, and just getting back around Auburn and that coaching staff. It's going to be hard for Penn State to hang on to him, even though Coach Sider is one of the best running back coaches in the country and one of the best recruiters. It's still going to be a tall task to hang on to him. And then Kroma, I've liked the way it's trending for Georgia if Georgia's got the gas pedal down there. But if they don't, if they land some other running backs like Bo Jackson or whoever it may be, that opens the door up even more for Auburn, where he's visited a couple times already this spring. Florida State, maybe they loop back around, but I actually have them kind of trending down for Kroma right now. When, at one point I thought they were 1A or 1B. So Auburn keeps getting them to campus. Heard it was a great visit. And so Auburn in the middle of that one, they'll have a seat at the table for that entire process.
Yeah, Auburn recruiting heating up already in the top 10. We'll see how they can finish as summer is right around the corner. All right, let's talk some SMU. Big weekend. Rhett Lashley and his staff. It was Pony Express weekend. They had 20-plus official visitors. It was a monster weekend, and quarterback Keelon Russell was on campus for his official visit. Like I said, big weekend on the hilltop. Steve, SMU nets 4 commitments over the weekend. It's safe to say it was a big success, right?
Oh, absolutely. This is a program that's the fresh new ACC team. They had several on 300 recruits, 4-star prospects, a bunch of their commits back. They're up to number 22 in the on-3 industry recruiting rankings. So a lot of energy around this program. They have one of the most coveted quarterbacks in the country in Keelon Russell committed. A lot of 4-star receivers and tight ends showing high interest. This is the program that finished in the top 20 in offense and defense last year en route to 11 wins and a conference title. Only one other program was top 20 on both sides of the ball. That was Georgia. So a lot to sell with SMU, the city of Dallas. They did it this weekend. It was massive, landing the 2 DBs, Sale Reyes and Zadian Gentry. Those guys are going to have a chance to play early, as SMU is going to lose a lot from their secondary following the season. Offensive line's another major position of need for them. They go out to California and land Drew Hill, who's a big body type. And then Xavier Johnson's a playmaking receiver from in-state North Richland Hills. There's also going to be a lot of turnover in that receiver room after the season. So they're addressing needs, hitting big, lead for several other guys coming out of the weekend, Josh.
All right. Now, Keelon Russell, he was the very first visitor to arrive on the weekend. What are you hearing about his trip, and just generally, how did it go? What's his commitment status right now with SMU?
Well, under the circumstances of still taking other visits, I think that people around SMU feel like it's pretty solid, close to home, a chance to lead this program into the ACC and be the face of SMU football for years to come, a program that has ambition of winning the ACC title. And with the way they're recruiting, when you compare the way they're recruiting to other ACC programs, they got a chance to be near the top of that conference and going to a 12-team playoff. If you're finishing in that 1 or 2 spot in the ACC, you got a great chance of making that 12-team field. So I think that SMU's in a good spot, but Ole Miss is certainly an intriguing option. And then you still have Alabama and Florida and potentially Oregon out there as well for Keelon Russell.
And yeah, you mentioned the teams that are actively recruiting, but what about Texas? Like, where do you put Texas in his recruitment?
Well, right now, Texas has a commitment from KJ Lacey, and his family continues to tell me that they're solid to Texas. Now, big decisions are made throughout the course of the year. Keelon Russell wins a state championship in the state's largest class. Maybe they start hitting the gas on him, and so maybe that moves the needle for Keelon. But we're not there yet right now in that recruitment, Josh. So I think right now SMU's got to worry about fending off some other programs.
Yeah. And speaking of that, do you have any concern over the timing of this visit for Russell and SMU? You know, they bring him in super early for this official, then he's going to go take all these other trips. Do you think that SMU maybe should have saved this official visit for later down the road?
No, because they can get him to campus anytime they want. This was a major weekend, Pony Express. They're not going to have another recruiting weekend like this. They did a lot of stuff around the city of Dallas. He was on campus kind of helping them recruit some of their top targets and building chemistry with other top prospects that they had on campus. So I think it's a win. It's not like the accommodations to get Keelon Russell to SMU are difficult. So this was the perfect time to use his official visit, and then he'll be back on campus. They can get him back anytime they need to, or it's easy for him to schedule one. So, I'm good with it. And again, with all the other guys that were on campus, getting him around those players and him seeing the potential of what SMU could be if he plays with all the guys that they had on campus is massive.
Yeah, Pony Express weekend already produced 4 commitments. Are you close to predicting any others to commit to SMU from this weekend?
Yeah, logged a new RPM right before we hopped on the air here for On 300 receiver Jalen Cooper out of Cibolo Steel. Very prolific pass catcher in the Lone Star State. Oklahoma State's in the mix among others, but I think that SMU setting the tone in that recruitment. Same goes with hard-hitting second-level defender Caleb Burns, a linebacker out of Houston High Falls. He told me that SMU's the leader for him. And then Keandre Johnson's one of the state's best pass rushers. He's been to SMU a lot. They're battling A&M for him, but with them moving to the ACC, they got more clout when they go into those recruiting battles. They're doing well with Keandre Johnson. They're doing well with in-state offensive lineman Devin Ferris. The biggest name on campus, outside of running back Michael Turner, who I still like SMU for on 300 recruit, is offensive tackle Lamont Rogers. And as you know, all the heavyweights are involved in that one. But SMU got him and his mom on campus this weekend. The Lamont Rogers camp has talked about maybe playing college football closer to home. So that's a recruitment that's going to go all the way to the finish line. SMU is going to have a seat at the table. And I'm certainly not predicting the Mustangs for Lamont Rogers, but it's exciting that they got him to campus. They're on the short list. We'll see what happens this season, and maybe they pull it off at the end.
All right, Steve, the class of 2026 got a new 5-star today. Offensive lineman Jackson Cantrell is the newly minted 5-star in the On3 industry rankings. Take us out of here with some intel on him and any other top 2026 prospects you want to talk about.
Yeah, so Chad Simmons and I combined on an intel piece on the top uncommitted 2026s in the updated On3 rankings that you can read all over on3.com right now. But Jackson Cantwell, the new 5-star. Georgia's kind of the program that we would give the early front runner lead to, but he likes Bama a lot, likes Missouri a lot. He could see himself at Nebraska. This is one of the best shot put discus throwing prospects in America. He's going to be out in Eugene for a national meet. He's going to visit Oregon and USC while he's out west. So he's still looking at a lot of programs. We kind of like where Georgia stands there. Number 1 player in the country remains Jakeem Stewart, Josh. I think Ohio State, USC, and Oregon are the programs standing out to him right now, with LSU, Texas, Auburn, and Miami, a few of the others in the middle of it. But LSU going to have a hard time keeping him in state with Ohio State, USC, and Oregon doing such a great job with Jakeem Stewart right now. We appreciate you guys tuning in to this Monday's episode of the Wiltfong Whip Around. We will be back on Thursday to talk Tennessee Vols and other blue chip recruits. Please hit that like and subscribe button, and we'll catch you on Thursday.